Hey guys, it's Communications. Welcome to my review of The Amazing Spider-Man. And this is interesting. I think I recorded a review of this before after I first saw it, and I did not upload it because I was like, oh, I really enjoyed it, and I don't know about the second time around. Sometimes when you see a movie in the theater, it kind of, it's kind of misleading. But I watched this again because I'm watching it again because I'm going to go check out Amazing Spider-Man 2 uh, tonight in the theater in IMAX 3D, and more on that later. And revisiting it again, I still like this movie. I'm going to be honest. I like this movie. I like it. Yep, I said it. I like The Amazing Spider-Man. I know my friend Matt hates it. I don't know how my other friend Effrey feels about it. I don't remember how he feels about it. I don't think he liked it either. I like this movie. Is it flawed? Yes, it has its problems. This suit is not is pretty lame, this suit, looking like a basketball. The new suit is 10 times better. But a lot of the things that I liked about the film when I saw it in the theater in 2012, I still feel the same way. I like the heart and soul and spirit that it has. I like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I like him as Peter Parker. He's a lot better than Boy Scout. Oh, Mom and Dad, hey, can I have some apple pie, Aunt May, Peter Parker, that Tobey Maguire played. If you think about it, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker's more of a douche than Andrew Garfield's. Oh, Andrew Garfield was staying out late because he wanted to help, the people who are in need of some help by figuring out an algorithm with Dr. Kirk Connors and doing a good, helping, for the greater good. But, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the first movie, for being a basically, I want to buy a new car for Mary Jane. Because that's one reason why he went in with Bonesaw, was to get money so he could buy a new car to impress Mary Jane. And that's why ultimately Uncle Ben died. Here it's a little bit, he's being a douche to the whole thing where he's not, not doing anything to stop the criminal. But he didn't know that the criminal was going to end up killing his Uncle Ben. So at the end of the day, like, there's even more examples I can bring up. How much more of a douchebag Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is compared to Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield is just a regular teenager who is impulsive, that doesn't know how to be appropriate in social situations. He doesn't know what's right or wrong right now because he's still trying to figure out who he is. So the moments where he retaliates against Flash, makes a fool out of him, yes, that could have been cut. The sting where he dunks a basketball could have been cut out. Him playing games with him was fine. Him dunking and breaking the backboard, it went a little bit overboard with that, and I'll get into that later enough. Those are some issues I do have with the movie. It went way too overboard with showing his powers in public places. It became to the point where it's like, especially in the high school, when Spider-Man started swinging around, they're like, hey, it's Peter Parker. Pretty obvious. Throwing the football, bending the goalposts. And that's basically, a lot of that stuff is not just nitpicks. They really do hurt the film. At the end of the day, the flow of the film is also a little bit slower paced. Compared to the first Raimi film or even Spider-Man 2. It's definitely a little bit slower of a pace. And in some ways it works, in some ways it doesn't. I like the fact that it takes the time to develop the characters, especially Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, to develop the relationship between those two so it's actually believable. And the acting I thought they had great chemistry. I really did think that both Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone had great chemistry. And I just thought the cast was really good. Denis Leary did a great job as Captain Stacy. Martin Sheen was great as Uncle Ben. Every bit as good as Cliff Robertson. Every bit as good as Cliff Robertson was. Sally Field was great as Aunt May. And I liked the aspect of talking about Peter's parents. That was in the comics, and I thought it was an interesting. It was a good way to retell the origin story, but in a different way. Yes, but all people say it's unnecessary. The unnecessary Spider-Man. Well, I understand that. We all know the origin of Spider-Man. He gets bit by a spider and so forth. But I thought the film did it differently, at least. It had the whole thing with Oscorp. It had it connected. It connected all the origins of Spider-Man directly with his parents and their disappearance. And the way that the spider bit him and the whole sequence was a lot different than it was in Raimi's film. It didn't do the same bad paint by numbers scene. It did a lot of things differently. Its approach was different. Its tone was different. The whole look of the film was different than Raimi's film. This is so totally separate from the Raimi films that you cannot possibly say that it's the same movie. So I don't understand the unnecessary Spider-Man angle. It was a completely different take on the character. It added a little bit more grit to the character, not darkness like some Batman thing. No, add a little bit more kind of gritty edge to it, especially the scene where he's messing around with the car thief. A lot of people complain about that because he's just being a douche. I'm like, that's Spider-Man. Have you ever read a Spider-Man comic? That's what he does. His villains hate him so much most of the time, not just because he's so good at kicking their ass and sending them to jail, but because he's so annoying and obnoxious. He won't shut up. He keeps nailing them and grilling them with constant insults. That's why his enemies hate him more than anything else, because they just hate getting roasted by Spidey. And that's the same sort of thing he's doing with the car thief. What we've been fans of Spider-Man have been asking for and wanting to see for years, since Raimi's dumb spider pun, shitty puns in the Raimi films. I just wish there were more. Because that one scene in the carjacking scene is the only time, oh no, you found my weakness, small knives. Oh, knives, you found my weakness. That's the only time you really have the fun wisecracking Spidey from the comics. The other times are lame one-liners. Like, somebody's been a bad lizard. Like, really? Or, I'm swinging hey, I'm swinging. That's lame. So that was a well-written scene. That showed Spidey's sense of humor, but the other scenes suck. In terms of, his sense of humor. But that's on the writing. That's not on the actor. And, I mean, he delivers a funny line a lot better than Tobey Maguire ever did. He seemed so uncomfortable in doing that. And also, Andrew Garfield genuinely loves Spider-Man. You can tell it with his performance. You can tell he loves being Spider-Man. And it's hard for me not to enjoy his performance in this movie as a Spider-Man fan. And I understand some of my best friends hate this movie. They thought it was terrible. And I totally understand why. But even the second time around, I can't get myself to honestly say that this was an awful movie. I can say it's an above-average reboot that was a necessary change to the franchise. Watching this makes me realize, okay, this is what Spider-Man should have been in the first place. Spider-Man shouldn't have been some, Clark Kent wannabe like Tobey Maguire. He did, when he cries in this movie, he cries because he's lost his Uncle Ben, or he cries when, Captain Stacy dies. He doesn't cry when Sandman does, tells this tragic story. He's like, he doesn't cry like a bitch, okay, like Toby does. All right? So that's not an issue. And watching it again, he is nowhere near as much of a douche, like I said, as Toby, or what a lot of people, I'm sorry, I'm going to even disagree with my best friend here. I don't even think he comes across as a douche in this. I think he comes across as a typical teenager. As soon as he gets superpowers, he's going to be a wise ass, go after Flash Thompson, you beat the shit out of me, you bully me all the time, and I'm gonna show you up. I would have done the same damn thing if I got superpowers and I had some bully giving me shit. I would have been like doing the same thing, clowning his ass, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Where the film went south is it took it too far. It showed way too many scenes of him doing that. It went too far to over fantasy ridiculous territory, Teen Wolf territory, with him slamming and crashing the backboard. Cut that out, and him just, screwing with Flash, like, hey, grab the ball, it's fine. That's fine. That's harmless stuff. Like, in comparison in the Raimi film, he just literally just punches Flash. As soon as he gets the advantage, he punches Flash across the room and then smiles about it. And this is before Uncle Ben even died. And so people were even complaining about the scene where he grabs Flash and slams him against the locker after Uncle Ben died. And people were like, well, he was just trying. He didn't know that. Have you ever been in that type of emotional state after such a tragic event has happened? You're angry, you're upset, you're pissed. You don't want anybody touching you. He didn't even give him a warning. He just touched him on the back, and then he flipped out. Bam! He said, hey, Parker. and then tapped him. He probably thought he was going to, like, punk him again or something. He was like, no, not this time, Flash. And then the scene ended, with them kind of having a moment. Not a bromance moment, but a moment where he said, like, does it feel good, huh? Does it feel good, Parker? It's like, I was just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know how you feel about, I'm sorry about your uncle. And ultimately in the comics, Flash would ultimately become best friends with Spidey, with Peter. That was never established in the Raimi films, and it was actually handled well in this film, I thought. Flash would eventually want to become the new Venom and be a hero and go fight in the war in Afghanistan. So I like in the most recent Spider-Man, or one of the more recent Spider-Man comics, I liked how they touched upon Flash that way. And I love how they handled the relationship between Peter and Gwen. I could have done without the stalker sort of aspect in the beginning. Oh, he has you on your computer. But, it's not enough to hate the film. There isn't enough of things in this movie, even the things that I don't like, for me to hate it. I don't like the way the lizard looks. He looks like a freaking Goomba on steroids. He still looks like a Goomba on steroids. Yeah, Super Mario Brothers Goomba on steroids. The problem is because of the whole head. Give him a snout. I don't have a problem with that design anymore. All it needed was a snout. Point. That's fine. All it needed was a snout. Making him look like a Goomba on steroids was a mistake, and it looked lame. So that's it, but it's still not enough for me to hate the movie. I'm sorry. There's a lot of other things about the film I like. I like the guy who plays Spider-Man. I know it sounds so simple, but I never really felt that way about Tobey. Even when I saw it the original film and the second one when it came out, I was like, hey, it's a Spider-Man movie. It's great. But I never thought for 1 second, oh, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. This is Spidey. But even in theater, when I was seeing scenes, like I think when you first put on his costume, I was like, this is Spider-Man. This is Spidey. And I just thought the film Marc Webb and the writers did a fantastic job capturing the spirit of Spider-Man. And what I really loved is that they touched upon the agility, the agile flexibility of Spidey in action sequences. And they made that a point of emphasis so much that the producers, this is one of the things that Marc Webb really made sure that they were going to do. It was a creative decision by the filmmakers to have most of the stunts performed practically on rigs by actors/stuntmen rather than extensively used CGI animation, like the first 3 Spider-Man movies. And Marc Webb explained that they wanted to make the film more physical and thus more realistic. And while filming in New York, and the crew built a whole rig hundreds of feet long over Riverside Drive in Harlem, and Andy Armstrong built a car rig with Andy Armstrong, who was actually the brother of Vic Armstrong, the famous stunt coordinator who worked on the Indiana Jones films and among others. And Andy Armstrong built a car rig with a series of wires to help the VFX, which required an incredible wealth of acrobatics. And I love that about this movie. I love the action sequences. I just wish there was more of them, more of the fight scenes with this wonderful choreographed, agile action, agile martial arts sort of action that is totally unique to Spider-Man. And I love those scenes when he first wakes up in the subway and is showing all of his abilities. And people complain, well, it's in public. What is he going to do? He didn't know he was going to have these powers at that moment. And also, it's just the same as Tobey Maguire just running and jumping on roofs and climbing on alleyway walls and Shazam and swinging across over the water tower on top of skyscrapers. It's the same thing. And plus, he didn't know he was going to get powers, so it was just a reaction. And it happened like that. And I thought it was a really well done scene when he first shows his powers in the subway. It showed the agile ability of Spider-Man. I thought it was a real joy to watch. Even in the theater, I thought it was really cool scene to watch. And it was also, again, to watch it here again at home. In my home theater, I really liked it. Because it's real, like, I'll use the word realism here because it wasn't CGI. And then later on, when he literally has a montage with a good song, which I actually like the song. I don't know what the name of the song is during the scene where he's skateboarding and everything. And I'm not a big fan of skateboarding, but just because you're a skateboarder doesn't mean he's a hipster. You know, I don't want to say he's a hipster. I really wouldn't say he's hipster Spidey. I mean, Spider-Man's always been kind of, Peter's always been, even in the comics, like his style was never, you know, I don't know. What am I even talking about? Who gives a shit if if Peter's a hipster? Who gives a fuck? It's all about the character. It's all about the way it's written. And I thought they did a good job. There were some things where, yeah, he kind of acts like a douche. But teenagers are douches. Okay? I was a douche. Okay? The teenage years, and this film handled it way better than Raimi did. You didn't even feel like um, Toby was a young man trying to find himself and figure out who he is. You never felt that way. You just felt that he was, already a man. You never had those moments of growth. And even when you did have moments that might be like that, they just felt artificial. And here I thought it felt real. The moment where he loses it and gets mad at Uncle Ben, and about him not telling them the truth about his parents. The building up the whole origin story about his parents is tragic. Think about it. His life is even more tragic. This is Peter. Think about how poor Peter Parker. I mean, like lizard, poor Peter Parker. That's another problem. Fucking lizard talking. I'll get into that later. But think about it. Really, poor Peter. It's really sad. That his parents literally disappeared and got murdered, disappeared, plane crash, and for the longest time, this is kept from him, from his parent, from his Uncle Ben, his Uncle Ben and his Aunt May kept this from him. What happened to his parents, and he didn't discover it until he found a briefcase in the attic, because they asked him if there was anything up there he wanted, and you got to think about it. That's got to be tough for a kid to grow up and then find out my parents are murdered. You didn't tell me the truth. They were in a plane crash. My father was working on research with cross species genetics and doing all kinds of strange things. He didn't tell me the truth. I don't blame him for having that moment. And I thought that was really well performed by Andrew Garfield. The moment where he just blows up. And I really don't blame him for feeling that way. Like, for instance, you have this. I'm trying to find the scene here. I don't know if they have it or not. I'm just surprised they didn't. IMDb. This one. Ben's talking to Peter, and he's like, "You are a lot like your father. You really are, Peter. And that's a good thing. But your father, by a philosophy of principle, really. He believed that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here, not choice, responsibility." Of course, that's the whole thing. Without great power comes great responsibility. We can't say the same thing. And Peter's like, "That's nice. That's great. It's all well and good. So where is he? What? Where is he? Where's my dad? You didn't think it was his responsibility to be here to tell me this himself? Come on, how dare you? How dare I? How dare you?" I don't blame him for feeling that way. And I thought that was a genuine emotion. And of course, soon later on, Uncle Ben would get tragically shot. Peter was being, cocky and, being not being good like his father said, wanted him to be. And or Uncle Ben wanted him to be. He just let the robber just go by. Gave him his free milk and then just went on his way. The guy's telling him, "Hey, save that guy, stop that guy." It's like, "Not my policy." And then Uncle Ben tries to stop the guy, grabs his gun, and he gets shot. I thought it was handled better in this film than it was in Raimi's film as well. The death of Uncle Ben. I really thought the emotion was there, and the emotion was there in the first movie too. But I just thought it was really well handled here. And it was different. They took a different approach. Uncle Ben actually tried to fight for the gun instead of get, shot. I guess he just got, it was a carjacking or a break-in or whatever. And this way, Peter is actually directly at fault here. Like, in the other way, it's like, okay, he didn't stop the bad guy, okay. But the cops could have done more to stop that guy after he robbed the wrestling place. And he wasn't there. He wasn't there to stop. He could have stopped the guy there, but he didn't stop him. But he wasn't there with Uncle Ben. In the way it is handled in this film, he's literally feet away from Uncle Ben when this happens. He could have done something, and he didn't. And now his Uncle Ben is dead. I thought that was handled better because he's right there. In the way it was in the comics too, he wasn't there when it happened. He just showed up for the aftermath. Here, he actually sees it happen. He sees and hears his Uncle Ben get shot because of a mistake he made, and then he goes in and watches him die while he's cradling him in his arms, and then he cries out in anguish, and tears of, sadness. And I thought it was really well handled scene. And I really like the scenes too in a more lighthearted sort of way. When he first gets his powers, he's fucking up things. He's smashing his fingers are getting stuck to the keyboard keys. He's experiencing spider sense. He's getting disorientated. He's going in to brush his teeth. He messes up the faucet. And some people have a problem with that, but I'm fine with it because think about it. If you have never had spider powers before, you're not going to know how to control them right off the bat. The same sort of thing was going on in Raimi's films, but I thought it was done a little bit even better here. And a little bit even more quirky sort of humor, which I really liked. And I like the way it was handled. And the whole sort of thing where he steals whatever from Oscorp and creates his own web shooters. Hey, that's the way it was in the comics originally. Peter was so smart, he created his own web shooters. And I can't really complain about that. I prefer the organic web shooters, but it's not enough of a reason to hate the movie because he has because he has web shooters now and not organic spinnerets in his wrists. I can't really have a problem with that. It shows once again that that's something that's uniquely Peter's. That's something that's his own, except for the fibers. Those aren't his own because they were from Oscorp. And a lot of the stuff that he does, even after he gets bit by the spider, is stuff that a kid would do, what a teenager would do in any situation like this. Like I said, when he does the montage scene, it's a montage scene. I know my friends and I were talking about, I missed montages. There's a montage in Amazing Spider-Man where he's learning how to climb the wall and swinging on the chain. May not have fast cut editing like a lot of the 80s montages did, but it still is a montage because it has a song in the background. I thought it was a good song, and he's learning how to be, how to control his powers. I really like that scene. Even the skateboarding didn't bother me that much. And obviously the soundtrack, despite James Horner's miserable score, is actually pretty good. The music choices in the film. But James Horner's score is, once again, he recycles music again. He's the biggest music recycler of his own work in the business. He does that constantly. Have you ever heard, I know I sound like a broken record for people who've seen my videos, who are big, long-time fans, but it's true. If you haven't heard, these scores back-to-back, do it. Listen to the score for 48 Hours and then listen to the score for Commando. They're almost entirely identical. He's so lazy. And in this score, he does it again. There's more than a couple moments in this score that sound exactly like moments from The Rocketeer. There's one point in this score where you hear the music swell when Spidey first leaps at the screen or whatever onto one of the skyscrapers, and it goes like that's literally from the end of The Rocketeer. When Cliff and Jenny are running away from Lofar while the Zeppelin is blowing up behind them, and they gotta grab onto the gyrocopter before it blows up. It's the same music. It's the same thing. James Horner can't help himself. He's got to recycle his own music. He's the laziest composer in the business. Come on, man. Stop recycling your own scores. So he did that there. And then the rest of the music was completely unmemorable and at points sound inappropriate for the film. The moment near the end when Lizard is going after Gwen Stacy, you just hear a bunch of piano. It sounds like a piano breaking. Like somebody just stepped on some random piano keys. And it's distracting. It makes you think. Literally, it happens when the Lizard punches through the door and you hear piano keys go. or whatever, clang, and it's really distracting. And it's like it makes you think that did the lizard step on a piano somewhere? Like where's the piano? Every time it happens, you're thinking that a piano was getting destroyed with a sledgehammer, rather than paying attention to the scene that's going on. It's supposed to be intense and kind of frightening, but it's not frightening because all you hear is loud clanging piano noises. Terrible score. James Horner, I gotta admit, one of his worst, because he really half-assed it on this score. I mean, let me just make sure that it is James Horner. I could have sworn it is James Horner. I know it's James Horner. It's music by James Horner. It is. He half-assed this score miserably, and the stuff that he did do on his own was completely forgettable. Yeah, had to steal music again, this time for The Rocketeer. Great. I like this movie, but The Rocketeer is better than The Amazing Spider-Man. But anyway, at the end of the day, I really like the film up until the point when the lizard starts to show up. When you have all the build, I actually like the character development in this movie. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was well done. Other than moments where Spidey shows his powers way too much. Peter, just cool it. And then Sony has to make it so, oh, we have to show his face. So he has to have his mask off almost at all times. That's Sony's fault. That's really a poor decision choice by them. And the worst Stan Lee cameo ever, which completely ruins an action sequence while Spider-Man is fighting a lizard in a library. Oh, we gotta go to like silent, completely silent, except for some crappy classical music, and Stan Lee's listening. And then the lizard and Spidey are fighting behind him. And then it's just a short cutaway scene just for Stan Lee. It's worst Stan Lee cameo ever. I hate that goddamn scene. Made me want to punch Stan Lee in the face. Just be like, get out of here, Stan Lee! I want to see it up close. A Spidey fighting the lizard in the library. We don't have enough scenes of Spider-Man fighting the lizard. The first time we just had him shooting webs at him. Here he's actually trying to fight him, and it's just in the background of a Stan Lee cameo? Get the fuck out of here, Stan Lee! But anyway, that scene, there are moments in this film that piss me off. That's one of those moments. The way the lizard was handled, I don't like the design. I don't like him talking like he's some stereotypical Bond villain. Oh, Mr. Parker. Like really, did he have to be British? Did he have to have a British accent? I don't remember Curtis Connors ever being British. I could have sworn to God he was an American in the comics. He was never a British guy. Nothing against Rhys Ifans. I thought he did a good job until he became the lizard. Then it became so over the top, and it was just silly. All the take over the world. It was like, no, we are the best. We are the perfect, whatever species. There's a new species in town. Even after he ejected himself for the first time, he sounded like a walking, talking cliche even before he turns into the lizard again. So yeah, that's just poor writing. I mean, and then the plan, you turn people into lizards, that's his whole plan. And I understand that's in the comic, and that's even the cartoon. But in a live action film, it does appear pretty corny, really. But not as corny as the Cranes. I mean, if you think the scene in the first Spider-Man movie where Goblin's trying to drop some people, he's got Mary Jane in one hand, and he's got like a bunch of people in another, and I think it's like a tram, like an air tram or something. Like the type of thing that goes over kind of stuff you ride at Disneyland. I don't remember the goddamn name of it. But anyway, he's got a tram full of people, and then he's got Mary Jane in one hand, and then he starts messing with Spider-Man, and then the New Yorkers start throwing shit at him. Goblin, and he's like, you mess with Spider-Man, you mess with one New Yorker, you mess with all of us. It was really bad. And it's just, but this could potentially be worse. Spider-Man got shot in the leg because some dumbass SWAT officer had an itchy trigger finger. Because literally, Stacy tells him, cease fire, and then he just fires as automatically as soon as he says, cease fire. I'm sorry, SWAT team guys are as highly trained as military officers. You're giving SWAT people a bad name that they're that... Oh, didn't shoot him! Oh, no, I shot him! I'm sorry! And then, come on, you're giving the SWAT officers a bad name with that shit. And probably SWAT officers watching this movie were like, oh, come on. They're just sitting down watching that scene. Come on now. Ceasefire. We're trained to seize fire. We're not gonna pull the trigger. It's not like he had the lizard in front of him with Spider-Man. And so that's only set up so Spider-Man can have the heroic scene after he got shot in the leg, and he can't. He can't. For some reason, he doesn't know how to swing across the city, and he still doesn't know how to do it very well. As you can tell in this movie, it's very new to him. It's kind of like but it's worked. It's done a lot better than Man of Steel, because I don't buy this bullshit that Zod knows everything and Superman doesn't, and that's a whole nother fucking scenario. In The Amazing Spider-Man, I buy it because he just recently got these powers. He just recently got these web shooters. He could barely figure out how to swing across town anyway. Literally, he was smacking against the side of buses and falling down on his ass earlier in the film. So he still doesn't know. He hasn't reached the ultimate potential of his powers. He hasn't learned everything yet. And to ask him to leap from building to building and building with a fucked up, shot up leg is probably too much. And they showed him earlier trying to do it, and he couldn't. So they set up the cranes, and he swings from crane to crane, and it's corny, and it's cheesy, but I'm sorry. At the end of the day, just like the scene in the first Spider-Man, you mess with one when you're okay, you mess with all of us. I liked it. Mainly because I got to see more of C. Thomas Howell, but also I liked it because I thought it was, I understand. Yeah, I didn't think it was that bad. When you look at the skyline, there is no flagpoles. There is nothing for him to swing onto. And think about it. I know you might think there would be stuff to swing onto. No matter what, there would be. But this isn't downtown New York in the business area. There's nothing but sleek, flagpole-less, edge-driven skyscrapers. There's nothing for him to swing onto except that tower on top of Oscorp, and he needs to get there. What is he going to do? Swing off a weather vane or something? And also, like I said, he does not know the full extent of his powers yet. So the best way was the easiest way for Spider-Man, for them to set up the crane so he could swing from crane to crane to the Oscorp Tower. I know it sounds stupid, and at the end of the day is, but also it makes sense. He does not know yet the full extent of his powers, and I know that sounds stupid, but you can see that throughout the whole film. And the whole idea, also going back with the whole douchebag Spidey, the whole scene when he's being a little bit overzealous and saying, I do 80% of your job, that's how you repay me with the cops, which is being a dick, that scene is there on purpose. Because if you use it, if you pay attention, because later in the film, when he goes to Gwen Stacy's for dinner, he has that conversation about, with Denis Leary, Captain Stacy, about, well, maybe Spider-Man's doing a good thing. He's trying to help people out. And he's like, I don't think he's trying to help people out. I think he's got, a certain vendetta against some, he's looking for people with the same, identity, same looks and everything. And I think he's got a personal vendetta. I don't think he's trying to help anybody except himself. And then you saw a moment of realization with Peter that, wow, I was kind of being an asshole. I was being a dick. And then later when he goes back to the bridge to help stop people from dying on the bridge because the lizard is attacking people, he saves multiple cars and he saves that kid. And then that's the moment where he realizes that, you know what? This isn't about revenge. This is about saving people. This is about being a true hero. About being good. Being a good person. Like later in the film when Aunt May says, I'm not good enough for her. I'm not good for, for Gwen. And she's like, no, don't give me that. You're a good person, Peter. No matter what anybody says. If anyone has a problem with that, they can talk to me. See, watching it a second time, I recognize all these things now more. There's even little things that I noticed. Like the whole scene after Uncle Ben is dead. And he goes into his room. Peter goes into his room and he grabs his phone and starts to listen to the voicemail. And I loved how they did not show the rest of the voicemail until near the end of the movie. It was one of the most powerful moments of the film. And still has blood on his hands. He literally still has dried blood from his dead uncle on his hands at that moment when he's listening to the message. And think about how devastating this has to be for Peter. And you saw him frustrated and he lashed out against Flash. That doesn't mean he's a douche. That means that he's depressed. He's frustrated at himself. He caused his Uncle Ben's death. And then later in the film, you realize he ended up creating the lizard. He created a monster because he was just trying to do the good thing, by giving him the algorithm to, fix the genetic serum, for the gene splicing to help people, but ultimately it had a side effect that he didn't think about. And, he created the monster. So then it's up to him to stop it. And, like I said, where the film works is the dramatic elements. Marc Webb knows how to do that. He did it before in stuff like 500 Days of Summer and things like that. He knows how to do dramatic elements in a film and have good weight to them. And I think it was a good choice to actually give actual dramatic weight that didn't seem artificial like the first Spider-Man, like Raimi's films did. That seemed so artificial and fake, a lot of the emotions that were created in those films. Here they seem genuine and real to me. People saying Peter's a douche, like I said, I even gotta disagree with one of my best friends. This is how I would have reacted if I was bullied and had the life that he had as soon as I got superpowers. And that's how Spidey is. He's kind of a douche. I know you might love Spidey, but to act like he's not a douche at some points, he is a wise ass. He's a wise ass smart aleck. That's what he is in the comics. There's a scene in one comic where he went for a drug dealer guy, and he webbed him down to the ground and took his drugs. It was like a cocaine addict or a drug addict. And he took his drugs and poured them out on the ground in front of him. And then just tied him up and just let him squirm. There was a scene in a comic where Spidey did that. And that's kind of a douchebag move to do. That's no other way around it. Spidey's done a lot of douchebag moves over his entire run, his story arc, in multiple different versions of multiple different comics. Spider-Man is not Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. He's not listening to Adam Ant on his iPod. So that's what I'm saying is, he's not Adam Ant. He's not Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. He is a wise ass. He does douchey behavior. But in the end, he's a good person. And he has a good heart. And he wants to do the right thing. So that's pretty much Spider-Man's character. And I think this movie nailed it. And I hope the next one goes even further. And like I said, I like the romance. It works for once. There's no chemistry between Peter and Mary Jane in the Raimi films. None. Zero. There's no chemistry between Gwen and Peter in those movies either. Here you have genuine chemistry because you have, I thought, actors that really did play well off each other. And like I said, good supporting cast, crappy score, shitty looking lizard, but at the end of the day, the CGI wasn't as bad as I thought it was. The action sequences when they're doing the practical stuff, when he's fighting the cops, I like that. I like the choreography. I don't like that scene. Having the cops go after Spidey while there's a giant lizard turning people into lizards makes no goddamn sense. Captain Stacy should put his death wish or whatever, his grudge against Spidey on hold until after the events in the second movie or the events later in the comics, which I'm not going to say anything, but I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm talking about because after those events, those tragic events, there's a manhunt for Spidey because Gwen State, something to do with Gwen, but because Captain Stacy, because he was still alive in the comics and didn't die, he thought that Spider-Man was responsible for whatever happened. So, hint, hint, everyone probably already knows what the hell I'm talking about because anybody who is a huge Spider-Man fan already knows what I'm talking about. Should have saved that for after that moment. Not now, because it seems so out of place and so random. And that's the problem with this movie. There are a lot of moments in this film that just seem like random moments and should be expanded upon. When he completely just spills the beans, I'm trying to say is, I'm Spider-Man or whatever, something like that. And it's some of Andrew Garfield's performance I liked, but the whole twitchy, I didn't care for that. tone that shit down. You look retarded. Dude, you look stupid when you're doing that. You look like a tweaker. I'm, And of course, that kind of brought back flashbacks to the scene in Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, where Michael Keaton's trying to rehearse to himself what he's going to say, because he wants to tell Kim Basinger who he is, and he's like, sometimes, people have different sides to them, and my side is like, no, that's not going to work. This is some kind of freak or something. What I'm trying to say is, I'm, and then the door, rings, or the door, someone knocks on the door, and then he's like, it's the same sort of. It reminded me of that, because he's trying to tell her who he is. I just thought they jumped the gun a little bit, but at the end of the day, I admire them for having the balls to do that in the first movie. Get that out of the way now. So don't do it later. Instead of the first Spider-Man movie, you don't know who you have to do that. Oh, who is, his girlfriend doesn't know who he is. Crap. I like that. I like these two together, so why not? But it didn't pay off well. It had an opportunity to really have a memorable, heartwarming moment between Gwen and Peter that could be right up with the likes of the "Can you read my mind" scene in Superman the movie. Because directly after that moment, he's talking about, why don't we, this is a little bit later actually. He's already told her, and this is after he got in a fight with the Lizard, which I like the way he's set up. Spidey's actually smart in this. I like that too. You don't get any inclination that Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is a genius. You don't get anything like that. Here, he's a genius. He knows what he's doing. He creates his own stuff. He created his own web shooters. He's smart. He thinks on his feet. He created the whole webbing thing. He created a web so he can, feel the lizard coming after him in the sewer. I like that way. I like that scene. I like the way that was set up. He helped try to figure out an antidote for Kurt. He tried to do all these things. He was using his intellect. I like seeing that. You didn't see that stuff in Raimi's films. You didn't get the idea that he was a genius. He is. In the comics, Peter's always been exceptionally gifted in terms of his intelligence. And it's definitely on display in this movie. And so then you have the whole sort of moment after he gets attacked by the lizard and he gets saved by the sewer system because it sends him out away from the lizard just in time. And he's got his deep gashes, scratches on his chest. And he goes in to, visit Gwen, and she sees he's hurt, and she's caring for him. And then he has that moment where he tells War, well, I can't go anywhere outside. My dad will kill me. He's just like, well, you don't have to go out with me. You can go out with somebody else, type thing. So we can still go out. And so you see it. I get the inclination that he's going to take her out, on a night, swinging around, or a romantic swing around New York as Spider-Man. And you see a glimpse of that. He grabs her, she's on his back, and he's swinging, and they're having a good time. And then it cuts to Rhys Ifans talking about his plan to turn people into lizards, and I that's a total missed opportunity. And that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of moments in this film that just make it a step down. They make it so this movie is not as good as it should be or could be. This movie could be a lot better. This movie could be a lot more memorable. This movie could be great if it just took some more time with some of the elements that it was trying to do. Having a scene like that just be 5 seconds and throw away and go back to, I'm crazy, mad, lizard man. I got voices in my head that are telling me I should do things, bad things, is not the right approach. You did a good job building the romance, and then the whole one scene where you have Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy having a romantic moment, we cut away from that, and that's like an afterthought for more of Rhys Ifans' crazy babbling? Mistake! Like I'm saying, that's a be like for Superman the movie, which is a great scene with Lois Lane and Superman. The beautiful scene with that wonderful score by John Williams, extremely memorable, and they're romantic, unbelievably romantic, beautiful scene where Chris Reeve and Margot Kidder are flying around the town, around Metropolis. Such a heartwarming scene. You could have had the equivalent to that for the Marvel film with Gwen. Prime example. These two have great chemistry, just like Margot Kidder and Chris Reeve did. And you just piss it all away for, I'm a crazy lizard man and I got voices in my head. Wrong. Stupid. I'm just saying, I just don't understand why that was not given more. It could have been just a couple more minutes more. But to have just 10 seconds of, get on my back, woo! Just Kick-Ass had more romantic scenes. I mean, you could make an argument that the scene where the girl is literally dry humping, literally humping, what is it, humping Kick-Ass in the parking lot. Is Aaron Taylor Johnson is a bit more romantic than that scene. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But that's what I'm talking about. Scenes like that are not expanded upon when they should be is why this movie falls in the above average category. It could be a 4-star flick. It could be a 4.5-star flick. It could be a 5-star movie if it just tuned up some things. Don't have Peter show off so much. A little bit is fine and it goes a long way. Don't have romantic scenes that are cut short and could be a lot more to them and just leave for more crazy babbling from your psycho villain. If you have a psycho villain, I don't know, kind of do a better job with the plan. Turning people to lizards is really silly. I don't know what else they could have done. I just think having the lizard as a villain was almost a mistake anyway. Because there's really not a lot to go off of with that character. Having him speak like a Bond villain is a mistake too, because in the comics, Lizard doesn't barely speak a dang word. That makes you feel even more for Curt Connors, because he doesn't have his intelligence when he becomes a lizard. It's more like he's just a wild beast now, and Spider-Man just tries the best he can to corral him, and also not hurt him, because he knows he's someone he cares about. You don't get that inclination here. That part of the character was completely missing in this film, because it was kind of there, but the relationship wasn't strong enough as it was in the comics between Peter and Curt Connors when he first turned into the lizard. And he also had a family. And that was he didn't have a family in this movie. It was just Curt Connors alone by himself. And that was a mistake, because that made the character even stronger. Because I think when he first changed, he transformed in front of his family. Because he was doing it in the back room of his bedroom, testing the stuff on himself, and he turned a lizard in his own home, scared the shit out of his family, and he went off into the night. That's a really intense sort of scene, and that would look great on the big screen, but no, we gotta go with the typical evil mad scientist or mistake. I made a mistake. I have to test it on myself because they need it for Norman Osborn because some asshole Indian guy is giving me shit. And that guy was an asshole. I guess assholes come in all different nationalities. But anyway, I mean, I know I'm going 47 minutes into this, but this is the type of movie that is one of those half and half. Like I said, it's above average, but it could be so much more. And those are the type of movies that I elaborate on, because I want to elaborate on why I feel the way that I do about it. And that's why The Lizard was poorly handled. They missed a lot of good moments with that character, with Dr. Curt Connors. A missed opportunity with the Raimi films. They developed this character enough that having him turn into the Lizard in part 4, which were they originally going to do, but Sam Raimi hated the script or something, would have had more impact. Having it just as the first villain of the new series, it's kind of a weak villain to start out with, because the Lizard doesn't really have that great of a plan, and there's not a lot of good a connection with Peter. And I really think that was, except he's a connection with his father, but he doesn't really know him that well. So I'm in the middle of. So it doesn't really know him that well. So anyway, I just thought the missed opportunity with Lizard. Look, a Lizard was lame. I really would have liked it would have been practical. Rick Baker or somebody, maybe Stan Winston studio. But the CGI as it wasn't that bad. Climax, really lame. Swinging across cranes. Like I said, I didn't have a problem with the scene, but at the end of the day, it's not that exciting. The fight with the Lizard and him on the crane on top of the Oscorp Tower lasted for maybe 2 seconds. It was like 30 seconds. Blink and you miss it. Nothing memorable about that scene at all. Cool idea with the liquid nitrogen. You know, the most memorable thing is that Denis Leary died. That's pretty much about that scene. And I thought the film should have just ended on the voicemail message, not continued on afterwards. That was a very high point in the film with this wonderful last words that Ben had for Peter. Peter, I know things have been difficult lately, and I'm sorry about that. I think I know what you're feeling. Ever since you were a little boy, you've been living with so many unresolved things. We'll take it from an old man. These things send us down a road. They make us who we are. And if anyone's destined for greatness, it's you, son. You owe the world your gifts. We just have to figure out how to use them and know that wherever they take you, we'll always be there. So come on home, Peter. You're my hero, and I love you. And then he walks up and he sees a spider emblem in this alleyway on the wall. It should have just faded to black. Having it cut to more stuff with him and Gwen and all the, you weren't there at the funeral, and then go into this and that. They could have saved that for the beginning of the second movie. And then to just cut, actually show the thing with him looking at the spider emblem, and then cut to the scene at the end where he's on top of the building and then he jumps in the air. End credits. That would help the film a lot end better, because it seemed like fractured. That's one of the problems of this movie. It's all over the place. There's this, there's this, there's this, there's that, and not enough of this. Not enough of the moments that really resonate with you. And plus, a lot of the movie is a lot of just deja vu. You've seen this happen before, but just a different take on it, which still makes it not as boring, but at the same time, a little bit unnecessary. I'm not going to say the entire movie was unnecessary, but the overlong, drawn-out backstory before he becomes Spider-Man is a little bit unnecessary. Having Peter with his mask off almost all times, that's a mistake. I hope they fix that in the sequel. And as for any other problems I have, I think I talked about terrible Stan Lee cameo, Peter with his mask off, showing off too much, not enough emphasis and on moments that really should grow and resonate with the viewer, and a little bit more action, because this, especially in the climax, not memorable at all. Not a memorable climax compared to the fight with Goblin in the first movie. Not even close. So yeah, in some ways it's better than the first Raimi Spider-Man, but I haven't seen that in years. But I remember for the most part really enjoying that one. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's miles better than Spider-Man 3. This is not nearly as bad as Spider-Man 3. No way. It has so many good things going for it, with performance-wise, writing-wise. Even the way the character is portrayed as Spider-Man is 10 times better, done better. And of course the suit, basketball suit, that's another problem. And they fixed that in the sequel. So at the end of the day, what else can I say about The Amazing Spider-Man? This is like a 50-something minute review, and like I said, it's a long one because I'm passionate about this film to some extent, because I feel it could have been so much better. But as it is, it's not a terrible movie. As it is, it's still a movie I like. It's still a movie I find entertaining, and I found interesting, and I found involving. I really like the acrobatic, realistic, actual people doing the stunts and choreography with the action sequences. Just wanted to see more of them. And I thought, as a Spider-Man movie, as a reboot, you know what? I'm glad they did it, because it could have been a lot worse. So anyway, it's here, they got the loud in the background. My parents were watching Pawn Stars. But anyway, I gotta go because I got Spider-Man 2 showing to go to. So, but before I go, I'll rate the movie out of 5. Like I said, 3.5. 3.5 out of 5 stars for this movie. Because, like I said, above average movie. Could have been so much better, though. Could have been so much more. But the things that were there was a good basis. It was a good foot forward. And, yeah, I feel that Sony's starting to get it right. What will happen in the sequel, I'll find out, and you'll find out too, because pretty soon I'll do a review. Will it be a review, or will it be a rant for Amazing Spider-Man 2? We'll find out. But anyway, this was actually, as long as it is actually a fairly positive video, but there are some issues. Lizard storyline not done right, costume looks stupid, the characters, the character moment is fine and all, but it kind of took over the film at points. Not a lot of memorable action, especially at the end. Shitty score by James Horner. And yeah, just in a fractured look to the movie. Just a lot of scenes jump from building to building like Spider-Man does. They're very fractured and really could use some better editing, or things could be trimmed or cut out entirely. But yeah, it kind of hurt the pacing a little bit. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think I'm the only one out of my group of friends that did. So, there we go. This is another movie that I can say, hey, I don't always agree with my friends. I like this movie. It's not perfect. It's flawed. But at the end of the day, I still liked The Amazing Spider-Man.